Okay, today for language arts, we are going to cover several topics about a memoir. The first would be the structure of a memoir. And the structure of a memoir is the way that a memoir can be organized. You can use any one of the three following structures, or you can use a combination of them. So the first one that you see on there is a small moment story. That is a brief narrative account of a specific event in the past. It's about 10 minutes of real time. It's focusing on just the event itself, not what led up to the event, not what happened after the event. Another option you have is an always story. And an always story is a summary of something that tends to happen over and over again. So this would be maybe you have 5 or 10 minutes experiences, and each of those experiences all lead to the same lesson. That's the key idea, that each one of these mini stories should lead to the same lesson. When thinking about this, if you remember Memoirs of a Goldfish, each story in the day led eventually to the same lesson. And finally, expository writing. Expository writing is where the writer teaches about the topic, and really what makes this stand out is that you're going to start with the lesson. So the idea would be the thesis would be telling the reader what your story is going to be about generally without giving away the specifics of the plot. And then you would also state the lesson. So for example, if my memoir the topic was about a big soccer game, I might say the following story focuses on my experiences at a soccer game and me trying to win the big game against our rival team. That day I learned a lesson never to give up. So in that example, you're telling the reader what the story is going to be about generally, you're stating the lesson, but you're not giving away the specifics, the climax of the plot. Next, there are 3 different leads you can use in a memoir. First is you could start with action. So the easiest way to do that is that the character is doing something or seeing something right away. This is a good lead to start with because especially in small moments, memoirs, the idea is that you're starting right away with the action. You are not telling the reader what happened before the event that happened, so action could be a good way to start that off in an exciting way. You could also start off with dialogue. Dialogue can be between 2 characters saying something. It could also be inner dialogue. Inner dialogue is when a character is making a decision about whether to do something or not. Then the final lead that you could start with would be feeling. That's where you would state how you were feeling at that time, the events were happening to you. That's where you would be describing to the reader how you were, what your character was, not what your character, what you were feeling like at that time, what you saw, things like that. The final piece that we're going to go over today is techniques that you can use in your memoir. And these techniques would be used within the body of the memoir throughout the story. So the first one, which ties in with the last lead that I talked about, would be internal thinking and feeling. Those would be personal thoughts and feelings of the writer. So you can do that through internal dialogue, where you're telling the reader decisions that you're struggling to make with as your character in the story. It could be just using descriptive words to describe the feeling that you have throughout the events of your story. That's how you can do that. Precise actions. So the basic example I have here, instead of just saying we played by the riverbank, which is an okay part of a sentence, you could be more precise in describing exactly what activity we played. I was skipping rocks with my best friend across the riverbank on a cold and damp morning in early March. And finally, symbolism. Symbolism is another technique you can use. That is where perhaps a certain object, action, or refrain, we went over a refrain today, that would be a repeated phrase or a sentence. But the idea is that these simple objects, actions, or refrain don't actually represent what you're literally saying they are. They represent a deeper or bigger idea. And I have on there some symbolism examples. If you were to click on the link, all right, see what it is here. So for example, certain animals might symbolize certain feelings, right? So like an owl would show wisdom, vulture could be even something as sad as death, but there's other things that you can see on here as well. All right, and now that we've gone over the structure, different structures you can use, leads you can use to start, and techniques that you can use, we're going to take a step back and go into the brainstorming and planning section. So think back to what you have been working on for slides 21, 23, and 24. I want you to then take that idea, and we're going to expand on a little bit further by filling out this slide 28. So you would be working through the memory, filling out those mini questions that you see on the right-hand column, working through it. The idea with this is that it's getting a little more specific with your planning, getting you ready to start your rough draft. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, if you're viewing this video, you can email me. I'll email you back if you have any specific questions on this. But the idea is now you would be working on this brainstorming planning guide, and that would wrap up what you're working on today.